It literally means no childcare. Families won't be able to use their subsidy. Childcare, small businesses will have to close, right? Families right now are paying $10. You take away this subsidy and that average cost is paying another rent bill. The math will never math for our families on ERDC. So it'll be catastrophic to Oregon's economy.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us on Policy for the People. I'm Juan Carlos Ordóñez with the Oregon Center for Public Policy. The topic of today's show is a crisis that's brewing in Oregon when it comes to childcare. Thousands of families here in our state are at risk of losing their childcare unless the Oregon legislature steps up and puts more resources into employment-related daycare. This program of subsidized childcare is on track to run out of money in January 2027. According to today's guests, Marchel Kaleikini and Ivy Major-McDowall, who are both with the organization For All Families Oregon. If ERDC were to run out of money, it would leave parents, children, and care providers in a serious bind. I spoke with Marchel and Ivy about the funding crisis facing employment-related daycare and how the state can ensure that families don't lose access to this vital program. Before we get to today's show, please take a second to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. You'd be doing us a huge favor. So thanks, and here's my conversation with Marchel and Ivy. Ivy, Marchel, welcome to Policy for the People.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Today, we're going to talk about the crisis that's brewing in employment-related daycare. And this is a state program that helps low-income families afford childcare. Before we get into that, though, I'd like to talk more generally about the state of childcare in Oregon. How would you summarize the situation when it comes to childcare in our state?
Yeah, I'll take that first question. I think the best way to describe it is childcare costs a lot. It's unaffordable and really hard to find, even though we know it's great to have. So parents can go to work. It supports our economy. And especially though, being able to have kids join a childcare or center and get quality care is so helpful in their development and supporting them later in life.
You mentioned the cost of childcare. Can you give us a sense of just how much it costs for families? How big a strain does it put on family budgets?
It's quite expensive. So it can cost up to $20,000 to $24,000 a year, which, if you can believe, is even more than some of our own Oregon public university tuitions. And so if you're like let's say a family of two who's making minimum wage in Portland, right? That could be up to like 30% of your entire household income in a year, or also if you're a single parent making minimum wage in Portland, that's 60% of your income, right? So yeah, it's a lot of money, $20,000 to $24,000 a year, and that can vary too, right? What if your kid is younger? Infant and toddler care is more expensive. What if also you're at home-based childcare or a center-based? And then too, also if you live in a more expensive city in Oregon, costs can be even more potentially than the $20,000.
You were talking about just how much of a bite the cost of childcare takes from family budgets. And so it seems like parents are caught in this awful dynamic where they need childcare to go to work, and yet childcare is really expensive, taking a lot of the money that they make. I wonder if you can describe what that means for families.
With even just doing that math, right? It doesn't work for working families to afford childcare, go to work. And so many times it's having to put a choice of like, can I really afford to live and work in Portland or other parts of Oregon, and having to choose between rent or putting food on the table or paying for quality childcare?
Yes, to everything Ivy said. And I think what we are hearing most from our base and what I had to do until my kids went into elementary is patching childcare in whatever capacity that means to make it work, right? And so for some folks, for some families, it's one parent working the day shift, the other parent working overnights. There is the need of like, okay, which parent will work and be able to have the flexibility to pick up their child and take them to another family friend or neighbor for after school care. And I mean, with the cost of care, even part-time care is just beginning to be really unaffordable for parents. We see a lot of gig workers, people who are doing, we hear are doing like DoorDash delivery or Instacart, things that are friendly to having your child with you instead of needing to pay for care.
And to add to the complexity of the issue or the challenges that present themselves in the space of childcare is that even though it's so expensive for parents, the profession doesn't pay very much. I wonder if you could talk about the wages and working conditions that workers in the childcare industry face.
Yeah, I think on average statewide, a childcare worker makes around $35,000 a year, which really I think shows how much we undervalue care work historically, even though and it's because the majority of childcare workers are female and women of color. So they're not making a lot, and they have to make that choice because as running a business like childcare, they need to be able to do the balance of like, what can they afford to staff and how many kids can they take care of, but also to make it at a reasonable price. So then working parents can then use their services and be their clients. And so they're always running that balance, even though we're seeing such higher costs for things. Like they help to buy and supply like materials, learning materials, but then also of like food to provide for their childcare. It like cost keeps rising up, but they have to keep some of their own like salary down as a way to be affordable for the parents they provide service to and kids.
The only thing that I would add is, providing child care, because of the low wages, it often has high turnover. We see a lot of child care providers and early learning folks who leave that workforce to go on to higher education because it pays more. There's benefits, right? When we think of childcare, we think unlimited time. Your childcare worker will not get sick, and that's not true. There's more germs than ever in a childcare place, and I think for a lot of the parents that we talk to, their journey into starting their childcare business was frankly because there was no other choice for them to otherwise stay at home. And so why not offer that to the rest of the community? So you're not talking about large investors who have overhead, right? These are people who are doing the work because they see the need or they had the need themselves and are filling the gap. So we actually have the largest workforce shortage in childcare workers across the state and really need to invest in that industry, frankly.
Speaking of shortages, one of the terms that I've heard mentioned in this space of childcare policy and the state of childcare in Oregon is the term childcare desert. I wonder if you can talk about define what a childcare desert is and how common are they in our state?
Yeah, a desert means that basically for it means like in a community, if you have like 3 kids to every 1 spot, that is sort of considered a childcare desert, that ratio of like only 1 spot is available for 3 kids. And that is really a huge problem statewide, especially for infant and toddlers. And that's the age between 0 and 2. I think the majority of our counties, so our 36 counties, 34 of them are childcare deserts for that age range of 0 to 2. There's not enough slots available, not enough spaces to provide that for the many young kiddos we have in our state. But still, too, we have seen and made progress for preschool age from the 3 to 4. We see more counties have been moving out of that desert status. And so we've seen more actually publicly available slots or publicly funded slots for that age range. But definitely we're still have a long way to go, right? Because we were wanting to move, of course, out of desert, but that means like, oh yeah, we have maybe 1 slot for every 2 kids. That means that's out of it. We want every kid to have available childcare, right? And so we have a long way to go as our state.
I recall former Federal Reserve Chair, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen say at one point that childcare is there's a market failure when it comes to childcare and care generally. It seems that may be what's behind these childcare deserts and the general challenges that we face in this industry. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Right. And part of that is like going back to my example of the parent who decides I'm going to start a childcare business because I can't afford to send my own child to daycare and can also make an income that way. If they want to expand the amount of children they serve or even make their space childcare friendly, there's a lot of overhead costs that I don't think a lot of people understand when it comes to infrastructure, safety, insurance, zoning, all the red tape that exists. And, as a parent, you're going into this small business space compared to larger establishments like KinderCare, who, has the capacity and overhead to really dive into and move these things along. So if you want the infrastructure and then you also want the quality, right? Now you have to pay the wages. You want to offer benefits. You want to have certain things available for the children. All of that adds up, and you can't charge a family the true cost of care because they are also, trying to balance their budget. And so because the true cost of care can't be charged, a subsidy has to come from somewhere. And it's the government's role to subsidize it. I mean, we know, especially in Oregon, because we don't have a sales tax, we depend on people going to work and, contributing to our state revenue to fund other things. So we actually leave $1.4 billion on the table when we don't invest in childcare because it truly is the workforce behind the workforce.
So that's a good sort of segue for the main issue that I wanted to talk about today, which is employment-related daycare, which is it's a state subsidized program. And I wonder if you can talk about what the purpose of employment-related daycare is, which is also known by its acronym ERDC.
Yeah, so it's our Oregon's childcare assistant program. So it helps support families who at their income are needing extra support so they can afford childcare. And so we currently know that there are 12,000 families currently active and connected to a provider through ERDC and using that. And there's over, I think, 4,000 childcare providers across Oregon who also accept ERDC payments and support then sustain their businesses as well. And I think also too, we know that right now the average pay that parent or families who are on ERDC need to make is just $10 to the program, which is like so affordable. Just like you're able to access this great program because the state is funding it. You just pay $10 for it, and then your kids, probably multiple of them, are able to then get that quality care for $10 out of the household's pocket.
What families does employment-related daycare serve?
That's a great question, because the assumption would be people who are working, since it's employment-related daycare. But we made some big changes in the state legislature in 2021, where we prioritize survivors of domestic violence to jump the wait list and get connected to care immediately. We also prioritize children who are in the foster system or currently going through that process. And then we also expanded the program to include students and TANF recipients, cash assistance families. And that's because all of these different agencies housed a childcare program. And as a parent, you needed to call all the different agencies to figure out what your options were. And that didn't make sense. And that doesn't make it easy for parents who are already balancing work and 5 different schedules. So we made the Department of Early Learning and Care. And so not only does it include and prioritize those families, the income limits are actually pretty feasible. You have to make within the 200% poverty level. But an example is for a family of 4, that gross income limit is around $5,300. And so looking at Oregon's median wage, it covers so many families that are looking for care. And that's part of the reason why we have over 15,000 families on the wait list, hoping that this program stays intact and funded.
And that figure that you mentioned, that's a monthly figure?
Yes, that's a monthly figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that it would cover quite a bit of people. I wonder if you could say a little bit about the history of employment-related daycare, how it came into being, how long it's been around, and how the program has evolved over the years.
Yeah, Marchel had already touched on this, but employment-related daycare had been in the Oregon Department of Human Services, but also to other state agencies, to even higher education, had different childcare programs because we knew TANF recipients, to also students, needed and to be prioritized to get access and help to get childcare. And it was all over the place, right? And fragmented. And so in 2023, we made the state agency of the Department of Early Learning and Care. So very, very recently, it's a new agency to really put all together our early childhood early learning programs, and including employment-related daycare, or ERDC. And with that, we expanded the program. And so as we mentioned, like, we know that so many people need support, especially if you're a family like making minimum wage, or in like thinking even lower income, to be able to get that access. And so, we've expanded the program, but as a result of, we have not seen funding come along with that from the state. And so we knew this was coming up. And so in 2023, we had advocated for more funding so we can support all the families who would be eligible for ERDC. And sadly, we did not get that funding then. And so we've seen this wait list of 16,000 families waiting since then to get those ERDC assistance. And families are still waiting on that. We're still having a very growing wait list for our child assistance program.
Can I share more about some of those changes that I think are key, though, to also explaining, like, how did we make it a $10 copay, right? And that's because, like Ivy mentioned, when those changes happened, we capped those copays at 7% of a household income. And you might think like, oh my gosh, $10 is so low. But when you look at the cost of care, that's now more than the cost of rent, right? And so when you look at how a family's budget after taxes is split up, this really allows the family to build their wealth and ultimately and hopefully get off of the program. And so something that I was really excited about is that exit limit also increased, right? So we talked about a family of 4 having to make around $4,300. Well, when they are exiting the program, when they submit their pay stubs for proof of employment, they now can make up to $9,000 a month when exiting. And so it really encourages families to pursue their career or, take that promotion, whereas prior to that, people were really afraid to grow in their career because you make $200 extra a month and you're over that limit, all of a sudden you're kicked off the program and stuck with a $4,000 bill that you have to pay for. The other thing that I think was really important for childcare providers is that they were paid based on enrollment instead of attendance. So that as a childcare business, they have that predictable, stable funding because kids get sick. Kids also go on vacation, and that should not prohibit a childcare provider from being paid because the cost of rent and your utilities, they don't change because a kiddo is sick. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is the program also allowed for extended hours so that families who are working those non-traditional shifts or longer days could still use the program and it not be such a 9 to 5, just unrealistic time frame.
I wonder if you've heard stories from families, from parents about the impact that employment-related daycare has had on their lives and on the well-being of their families.
Yes. I mean, like Ivy mentioned about the funding, we've been cultivating our communities and talking to our base members about just how impactful ERDC and also programs like Preschool for All has had on communities with access to it. A lot of the stories that I come across are survivors of domestic violence who are able to break away from that relationship because their child has a safe and stable place to be and they can go to work and have financial freedom. We have also heard, and if you check us out online for All Families Oregon, shameless plug, you'll meet one of our parent advocates, Natalie Kaya, and she talks about, being a small business owner, self-employed, really having a great year one year, and making just a little bit over the income limit and getting kicked off. Well, that completely put her out of her situation. She ended up taking her and her 4 children to a homeless shelter where now, because she is in a homeless shelter, she can't work, there's no income. Now she qualifies for ERDC again and getting back into starting from scratch, right? And so it's very important that we as advocates and people with power and in the legislature really understand that cycle of poverty and that cliff that I was talking about, because that stability needs to be consistent and it needs to be, 12-month eligibility because things happen and it's best for the economy. And it just is so impactful for families who can have some reliability in their life.
For All Families Oregon has said that employment-related daycare is on the brink. Can you talk about the funding crisis that ERDC currently faces and how we got here?
Yes, we know because we have been talking to our state agency, the Department of Early Learning and Care, and they had reported to the state legislature in November that they are seeing a shortfall for the ERDC program. And that had also happened because when they were approved their budget for the 2025 through 2027, it did not meet current service levels. So we knew as advocates that this was going to be a problem, and here it comes straight at our door. And so DELC has said it's estimated to be a 73 to 88 million shortfall in the program as it's at its current caseload of serving 12,000 families. That's on average 24,000 kids statewide, is running out of money by January 2027, so next year.
So what happens if the program runs out of money a year from now?
It literally means no childcare. Families won't be able to use their subsidy. Childcare, small businesses will have to close, right? Families right now are paying $10. You take away this subsidy and that average cost is paying another rent bill. The math will never math for our families on ERDC. So it'll be catastrophic to Oregon's economy.
Mm-hmm. And the data backs that up too, because as I mentioned before, of like when we look into childcare deserts, in the recent report that came out from OSU, Oregon State University, they said that 19 of our counties would move into desert status because if we lost those publicly funded slots, and that includes ERDC and our other early childhood programs. We have from our own base who has submitted testimony in support of ERDC. A lot of them are rural providers who also depend on or also are able to run their small childcare business because of ERDC slots. So if we take those slots away, that just puts the childcare businesses in such a huge pinch, and they may have to close their doors. And that's just even if like funding, for example, returns the next year, that's possibly making a business close now in this year that we can possibly not recover from.
And just to see if I'm understanding it clearly, if the program runs out of money in January 27, does that mean that the 12,000 families would lose their subsidy?
Yes, absolutely.
Or it's also the policy choice of state legislators of just cutting off or reducing the caseload as well of the families currently served. So either way, thousands of Oregon families could lose their access to this childcare assistance that's so vital for them. And that's the policy choice that legislators are making if they don't fund this.
So we're speaking on the eve of the start of the 2026 Oregon legislative session. What are you asking Oregon lawmakers to do with respect to this funding crisis that ERDC is facing?
You know, our ask to lawmakers is to be bold and to disconnect from the federal tax code. We don't need millionaires and corporations to have double the loopholes and in their taxes. And if we do that, that gives us, almost $400 million in revenue, depending on which codes we disconnect from. And that literally will not just cover the ERDC shortfall, but really support other agencies that are struggling because of the federal government's attacks on SNAP and Medicaid. The other thing that I would uplift to lawmakers is this is the time that they can step up in their leadership to fund ERDC during a time when Head Start is being federally attacked. Preschool for All is also under attack from the wealthy folks in Portland. And so that return on investment of childcare is $4 to $16 for every $1 we invest. So it seems like it should be a no-brainer, but it starts with that choice to prioritize funding this program and making sure that no families are cut.
I wonder if you can explain a little bit, walk us through the issue of disconnect. It's a bit of a complicated topic, perhaps, as tax issues tend to be. But I wonder if you could sort of break it down for the listeners, kind of like how an ordinary person might understand what this is all about.
I can try to tackle this. I've been having conversations with my 10 and 13-year-old about this. So the best way that I could explain it is, saying Trump and his administration, they created tax breaks for his wealthy friends and corporations. Oregon is one of those states that copies and pastes almost exactly what those federal tax breaks look like. So if you are wealthy and you do business in Oregon, or you have a corporation here, or you are wealthy and you live here, you get double the tax break and double the loophole. Or we can join almost every other state in the country by saying we actually don't want the same tax breaks and loopholes for wealthy people and corporations who pay their CEO millions of dollars. We're going to have them pay the exact same tax rate that they've been paying every single year. And just by doing that, we have so much more money to support our roads, our hospitals, our schools, childcare, Oregon Health Plan, and all the things that are so important to our community and our neighbors. And you know what my kids' responses are to that? It's like, why haven't they done that yet?
Some in the legislature might say, we are facing a shortfall because of these Trump tax cuts, in part, and there's also a lot of other programs that need resources. There's just not the money to go around. I wonder if you have some thought. How would you respond to that argument?
Well, I'll start, and Ivy, of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. But we saw the administration move money from SNAP and in Medicaid to fund things like ICE, to fund wars overseas. And so it's not that there is no money. It's what are the priorities of the administration and their responsibility to community. There are some tax breaks that the administration ran on during their campaign, such as no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on if you bought a new car. We intentionally looked at what are the things that will affect working families that we should not touch, and what are the things that would basically target the wealthy folks and corporations who frankly can't afford to pay the tax.
Yeah, just echoing Marchel, I just love the way that you put it. And we know already too, just the wealthy and corporations are going to benefit already federally and when they do their federal tax returns. So why do Oregonians need to be harmed as a result of it? We are now having to choose who gets childcare, who gets food assistance, who gets housing assistance. Those are on the chopping blocks right now because we feel that there is, as Marchel said, no money. But there is this way by disconnecting from our federal tax codes to save money and then put that and state our values of where we need to prioritize our money, which is towards working families and supporting them.
As we wrap up, I wonder if you have any final thoughts that you would like to share regarding the state of childcare here in Oregon and in particular employment-related daycare and perhaps kind of what the way forward is.
Well, I'm happy, I wouldn't be in my position if I wasn't an organizer first and at heart to really welcome everyone who's listening to join the fight. Our team is in the building all the time, and we hear from lawmakers that they need to hear from their constituents on just what we experience living our day-to-day lives. And, it's so important that we mobilize right now and move the conversation from social media and into testimony, into public hearings, into the email inboxes of our state lawmakers, because that is where we can be the most effective this short session, and be very aware of what the policies are that are at play and will directly impact each and every one of us. All of these issues are interconnected. If I have to pay my childcare bill, I can't put the same amount of groceries in my refrigerator. I might not be able to pay rent. If transportation is cut, I might not have a ride to my job and need to start over. There's at the end of the day, it is the working class and working families that are the core of our communities that are under attack from these really wealthy folks. And we need to really stop fighting each other and come together. So the call to action is to sign up, get involved with our organization or organizations that fight for issues that you care about. Our coalition, the Childcare for Oregon, will be in Salem on President's Day, February 16th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We will schedule all the meetings for you, and it's just going to be a great time to be in community and meet new people and be like, oh my gosh, we are actually all struggling with the same thing together. And it's not because we suck. It's because of the policy choices. So get involved. Let's take action. I'm obviously super fired up to head to Salem.
And Ivy, if folks want to get in touch with For All Families Oregon, how can they get in touch? And also, if you have any final thoughts you want to share with us, please go ahead.
I guess, is this where I drop my email? Because we don't have we definitely follow For All Families Oregon on Instagram. We also have a Facebook, but definitely Instagram is more active. That has our registration link. That's how you can sign up and volunteer with us. Also, you can reach out to me specifically, Ivy at forallfamilies.org. I would love to get you involved as well. Because, all the time I am meeting with these legislators and they're tired of seeing my face and they need to hear from their own constituents. Find out who is your state rep and state senator, call them, email them, or also join us in person in Salem because there's a lot of ways you can take action now. And we'd love for you to join us.
Well, Ivy and Marchel, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.